So I wanted to talk about Owen Jones, because Owen Jones did a wonderful little stream about free speech.
Oh, yeah.
I think you're going to enjoy this one, because I can't get over how he unironically did this and thought this made him look good.
So for anyone who doesn't know who Owen Jones is, why are we talking about him?
So Owen Jones, he's been a Guardian columnist for God knows how long now. Gets funded by the Guardian to make videos. I think they cancelled him after they lost a bunch of funding. So boo-hoo, because I don't respect his journalistic work. I don't think it's respectable.
Well, James O'Brien described him recently as a left-wing propagandist.
Yeah, I think if he was honest, he'd describe himself as that too.
Yeah.
Like he's invited on TV shows endlessly, in the same way Ash Sharkar or these people are, because the booking people like them.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And
He's
your
friends
pocket
with
leftist
them.
that you can just bring in. And he's now got his own YouTube channel. He's doing his own podcast, trying to do something during COVID, I guess. And it's going well, as you can see from that image. I don't think the audience can see it, but let's play this first clip. So this is Owen Jones. The whole thing is about free speech, and this is his intro to show that he's taking this very seriously. So let's play.
Hello, and welcome to the show. You'll often see images of people who have on front pages, ironically, of the Sunday Times magazine or the Daily Mail with like sellotape over their mouths or having gags themselves in the way I just did. And I think it's quite a good illustration of this whole discussion we're having today about free speech, because they've voluntarily done it performatively and they can take it off whenever they want. And they're doing it on the front pages of mass circulation media outlets where they claim to be silenced. Being silenced these days or telling everyone you've been silenced is the best possible avenue to start the I've Been Silenced tour.
I mean, we're already off to the retardation here. I mean, the idea that someone who's been silenced and then goes to a newspaper and says, hey, I've had my book deal cancelled because of my political opinions. I've had my job taken away because of my political opinions, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Goes to the newspapers and say, this has happened to me. Can you guys make a story out of this? This is disgraceful. And the newspaper's like, yeah, we're free speech warriors. Screw them. We're going to run the story and we'll have an image of you with a tape over your mouth. And therefore this is somehow wrong, or shows that the initial silencing did not happen.
But does he think there aren't enough examples of people that have been silenced?
He doesn't believe they exist by the way of this live stream went. And I also love the idea that they can take it off whenever they want. What?
Oh, I'll have my Twitter account back whenever I want them, please.
Yeah, I'll have my book deal back.
Wait, I can't get those back.
Oh, no, those are gone.
Oh.
Well, never mind then, I suppose.
Oh, I guess Owen Jones was wrong then.
And
Let's ask Donald Trump. Let's see what he's tweeting. Oh.
I mean, when we're talking about, he's saying national circulation newspapers as if they also can't be silenced.
Yeah.
I mean, as this was an issue a couple of months ago in which Extinction Rebellion went down to like the distribution depots of right-wing newspapers and just blocked them all. They could not distribute their newspapers because left-wing protesters were like, nope, you need to be silenced. I was like, okay.
Unreal.
This doesn't happen, Owen, I guess.
I didn't even hear about this.
You don't remember this?
No.
It was the Daily Mail, the Sun, and the Telegraph. I think it was their distribution centre. They just sat around and blocked the trucks so they couldn't go out and deliver their newspapers.
Unreal.
So then, no one got them.
Yeah.
It's like, right, yeah, that's where we are.
Okay.
So then the next clip I wanted to say here was him talking about that person who says they've been silenced, goes on the newspaper, and they'll then go on a silencing tour and get themselves more and more exposure. So.
Maybe you could start the tour, I don't know, with a front page on the Daily Mail, I've Been Silenced, followed by a follow-up op-ed in the Daily Telegraph about your horrendous silencing, followed by the Today programme, Newsnight, Question Time, a book, obviously the book deal with the title I've Been Silenced. And then you can do your national I've Been Silenced tour all over the country where you tell thousands of people about your silencing.
But if all of those things have been cancelled, Owen, how do I do that? If Extinction Rebellion are blocking the paper's deliveries, if the TV shows won't have me on, if the live venues are cancelled or get raided by Antifa like has happened to us, like how do I...
How does that tour take place?
Yeah, exactly. How do I do any of those things, Owen?
But even then, let's say leftists don't take issue with that and allow you to have your tour, graciously allow you to have your right to free speech. And how does that change what happened? Like, you still lost your job, you still lost your account, you still lost whatever. The initial silencing in which you are speaking about must surely have happened still.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what is the tour about?
But Owen is really complaining here that it wasn't that you were silenced, it's that you were not completely silenced.
Yeah, that it was unsuccessful.
Yeah. We
That's
tried
the
to
complaint.
cancel you and only got one or two of your platforms and not all of your platforms. So stop complaining. You haven't been silenced.
Like, we were able to take down your YouTube account, your Twitter account, your Facebook account, or whatever, Laurie, but you still managed to get into a newspaper? This is, no, you're still as free as everyone else.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
I tried to look into an example of what he was talking about specifically, people saying I've been silenced. I couldn't find exactly what he was talking about, but I did find one, which is a Telegraph article, which is titled, "I'm sick of being silenced by social justice warriors." Yeah, you and me all, I guess.
Yeah, who isn't?
Unbearable. And this is just like the only title I could find that fits what he's saying. And in there, they're talking about Jordan Peterson. So Jordan Peterson was given an opportunity to come and talk about divinity at the University of Cambridge.
Yeah.
And
Well, wasn't he given an associate professorship there?
something like that.
And that was taken away from him.
It was him coming. He would have this, then he would come there as a fellow and talk with the teachers and students about divinity. Perfectly reasonable. Like, the guy's done multiple lectures on the Bible to
Well, yeah,
to
he's
death.
an expert. He's written a book on Maps of Meaning.
And they decided that after consultation, well, I say consultation, screeching from the students,
Screeching from Twitter students.
yeah, certain kinds of students, that no, this couldn't happen, and they took it away, and he wasn't allowed to come and do this. And Cambridge issued a statement in response after taking this away, saying, "Cambridge is an inclusive environment, and we expect all our staff and visitors to uphold our principles. There is no place for anyone who cannot." Okay?
I don't even know what you believe, Cambridge University.
Whatever they need to for the day, by the sounds of it.
guess so, yeah.
Because, I mean, what in him talking about divinity is against your standards? Presumably just being anti-woke. I can't think.
Militant atheist university, Cambridge, has decided to deplatform Christian speaker Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Students' Union at Cambridge gave a statement as well. His work and views are not representative of the student body, as if they're meant to be.
Who said they were?
And as such, we do not see his visit as a valuable contribution to the university. As if...
But one that works in opposition to the principles of the university.
But-
What, he wants free speech and open dialogue.
But think about what they're saying there. If a person visiting is not in agreement with the student body, their visit is not valuable.
Yeah, why would you want to hear from people who are just going to give the received mega narrative from the institution?
Like, no, we only want that. We can't have someone coming here and disagree. What is the point in a state-funded university, if that's what it is?
Absolutely none.
And this is what Owen Jones is complaining about. I mean, this is the type of article where they're saying, I'm being silenced by social justice warriors. That still happened. Jordan Peterson didn't get his fellowship. He didn't get to go there and give his talks about divinity.
But he's still got a YouTube channel, so that's...
So he's fine. He's never been silenced.
Yeah, he's never been
There's
silenced.
nothing going on there. Utter moron.
Yeah.
And the annoying thing is Owen Jones does understand the problem.
Of course he
And
does.
I'm going to play clip 3 here, which is just him describing the problem.
The declaration of war by the so-called woke left on free speech, which has turned universities into places where free expression and free debate has been shut down by an intolerant woke mob, necessitating government intervention with a free speech czar in order to enforce free speech on campuses across the country.
Unfortunately, yes, that appears to be the case.
So he knows what the problem is.
Yeah, he does. I mean, I don't relish the idea that we have to get the government to intervene to protect our rights, but that is what the government's for, so why not use it?
Like, if it's for anything, it is the protecting of natural rights in any liberal society.
Yes.
In which case, okay, I mean...
The socialists are furious, obviously, at that formulation, but yeah.
What do you mean human rights? This is so...
Your rights come from the government, and that's it.
Yeah,
sorry.
so then the next clip I want to play is just him complaining that the real problem here is the right wing. They're the ones trying to come for free speech.
Yeah, it's the right wing that's really about cancel culture.
Everything he just described there, that's not true. That's a false narrative pushed by the right. And the
Amazing.
real problem is that the right wing are trying to come after people's free speech. Let's play the clip.
The real threat to freedom of expression and free speech isn't actually coming from the left at all, but from the right, and yes, the government of the day that is in charge.
Free speech is a legal concept. It's a right defined in the European Convention on Human Rights. It's a right defined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And all these things say the same thing, which is that the government should not punish you for expressing your opinion, but within reasonable bounds. We're in this weird situation where what the government is proposing to do is protect free speech, and it's going to do that by expanding the power of the state to tell people what they can and can't say.
Based
and who they can and
libertarians.
can't give a platform to. The government issued guidelines to schools saying you're not permitted to use learning materials produced by any extreme organizations. And by extreme organizations, we mean a huge range of people, including anyone who criticizes capitalism.
Good.
This comes on the back of ministers saying to universities, we're not going to give you any COVID relief unless you're making sure you give a platform to people of whom we approve. And then on top of this, they're proposing a law that will allow people who have been no-platformed or discriminated against by being criticized to sue the university that's responsible for that. On top of this, the government they've banned bias training in. You see in universities subjects like humanities having their funding eliminated, arts, despite being a highly profitable sector, having its public funding eliminated. And I think all of this is part of the same thing.
So he writes for Bellingcat, coincidentally.
Oh, that's
anyway,
interesting.
So this is one of his guests.
Well, hang on a second. There's a lot there to unpack.
Yeah,
because,
so I
he's completely wrong about almost everything that we're saying.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that the right is the threat to free speech. I'll give over. The right's the only people doing anything against free speech. But the idea that free speech is just a legal principle is amazing, because it's not. I mean, it's a moral principle. It fundamentally has been. I mean, like Marcus Aurelius, in fact, the book club about his meditations, he talks about the importance of free speech in that. This is a 2,000 or 3,000 year old concept, because it appears to be part of our natural rights. So the idea that it's just a legal principle, no, it's just wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's absurdly wrong. I mean, the fact that he's quoting the UN and the EU for their definitions of free speech, I mean, tell you immediately this man knows nothing what he's talking about. Because you would not do that if you wanted to talk about the concept. You would talk about the liberal traditions. You would talk about, like, On Liberty arguing about it. You would talk about Areopagitica, things like this. You would not go to, these globalist institutions who define free speech. In both of these instances, they say you have the right to free speech, except if it violates this, and this is an unenviable list of things in which, under any circumstances, we can take it away. Morals, for example, in the EU one.
Yeah.
What if it offends morals? We can delete your free speech. Yeah, that's something worth citing ever. Like that.
Amazing.
And then he says that the government wants to introduce this free speech czar to make sure that there are things that you can and cannot say. That's just a lie. Like, they're not there to tell you can't say this. They're there to say you can't deplatform that man.
Yeah.
That's it.
In fact, the purpose is so you can say things.
Yes, it is not to cannot. Anyway, they also say that they have guidelines for stopping people using materials that criticize capitalism. This is just a lie. We've covered this, I think, a while back. So the government brought out guidelines for schools. So we're not talking about universities. We're not talking about adults. We're talking about children. And it says that if you have materials, they have to be non-extremist, blah, blah, blah. And it is quite sensible the way they defined it. They defined it as basically anything who has a worldview about overthrowing the fundamental parts of the British state.
Don't teach revolution.
Anti-democracy movements. Don't use materials that promote that sort of thing. Don't teach religious extremist movements who advocate for theocracy. Don't do that. And then, communism. I mean, radical communism. Do not use materials from that sector. Like, that's fine.
Totally reasonable. I assume you don't going to use Nazi ones or anarchist ones. Just things that are just sensible and liberal and centrist.
Yeah, you want to avoid these things anyway, so that's fine by me. I mean, it's a state-funded university. You want to keep these things non-partisan, and if you can do anything there, it's just don't overthrow the state in which you exist. At least when you get to university, do what you want.
Small things.
Yeah, because we're dealing with children here. There's a neat part. So then he says that that universities want to give COVID relief, depending on the platform conservatives. They are getting state funding to run. Yeah. So, I mean, they have a duty to uphold free speech, surely. And then you can sue a university if they deplatform you. Who cares? That's a good thing.
Yeah.
And then if the government doesn't fund unconscious bias training or humanities and the arts, that's them deplatforming free speech.
Oh, dear.
If the government doesn't fund me, if they don't fund my YouTube channel, they're deplatforming me. Wait, what a stupid thing
I thought
to
we'd
say.
agreed that deplatforming is good, Owen.
Yeah, apparently not, I guess. So they then go on to complain about we have a conservative government, therefore that anything the government does must be some kind of wrong thing. And then they talk about the culture war being waged by this conservative government. So conservative ministers saying something about the flag or saying something about Rule Britannia or something like this. And I wanted to play this clip here. So they're just talking about culture war.
You've got kind of the propaganda end, which is silly cultural skirmishes about the flag, about British fish, the kind of Brexit related propaganda culture war, which I think is just indulgence and frippery and distraction. But there's a far more serious part of it. It's kind of the front line of the culture war, which is very impactful and which has an agenda which is to forestall the progress of sort of social justice movements. And the second thing is to kind of slowly make the environment more hostile towards them as well. So it's a popular opinion changing exercise, and it's very dangerous because the right has so many resources in its hands. It's in government, it's overwhelmingly amplified in the media, and with a kind of sustained assault against Black Lives Matter, against students, against trans or kind of gender related issues, all the issues that are or belong or have a home on the left and that are designed or intend to promote equality are targeted in this kind of popular culture stigmatization by the government. I think that's very, very dangerous because it does two things. It sets up right-wing parties, Conservative Party, for re-election in the next election cycle. And the second thing is it casts suspicion and doubt on all these movements before they've even started. So before people even listen to what Black Lives Matter has to say, for example, they have heard and seen and read so many things about the movement being Marxist and being violent that there is a kind of a ready-made suspicion there.
So if you learn the facts, if you go down the rabbit hole, you'll find out that Black Lives Matter is a bunch of communists who hate white people and want to overthrow capitalism and abolish the police. And we don't want you having that presupposition about Black Lives Matter because you might think we're crazy.
I mean, you'll notice here, we're talking about conservative ministers, so politicians, people who are elected and party political. Them campaigning on an issue is somehow, an attack on free speech because what they're engaging in is trying to convince the public that leftism is bad, essentially. I mean, she even says here...
And we felt personally attacked by that.
Yeah, the culture wars they're engaging in are there to stall social justice movements. Well, thank God for that.
I wish.
But also, they're allowed to. They're private citizens. They're politicians. Why should they not? And they're also making the environment hostile for SJWs. Good. And they're also engaging in changing popular opinion, and that's dangerous. It's dangerous to change popular opinion.
Against them, because they might find themselves with nobody supporting them, with nobody thinking that they're doing the right thing. They might be ignored.
It's certainly dangerous against leftism, I suppose. I don't know what else to do.
That's a massive danger to leftism.
And also it sets them up for re-election. It's like, well...
Sure.
They're politicians. What the fuck else do you think they're going to do with their time? And casting doubt on their BLM, good. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
I mean, showing the videos, showing their own propaganda, saying, we want wealth redistribution, the destruction of the nuclear family. Marxist
it's killed dozens of people. It's killed dozens of people. It wants to destroy the family, it wants to overthrow capitalism. It's Marxist. It's exactly. It's literally inherently revolutionary, and I'm not for revolution. So end of story.
And I'm going to play a clip here, her trying to castigate how, those free speech warriors are such a bunch of, they're claiming victimhood, even though nothing's happening to them. And I want you to just, when you're listening to this, think of...
But my Soros check didn't clear this month.
Think of BLM the whole time she's speaking. So let's play the next one.
So it's very important for dominant forces to project themselves as weak. This is one of the main things that happen when a certain political ideology becomes really powerful. The only way to sustain its power is to pretend that there is a kind of incipient assault or threat to it all the time. So whether, for example, with Brexit, when there was a vote where Brexiteers won, they had to frame their victory as fragile and prone to being overturned all the time because that's the only way they could maintain momentum behind it. So it's called I call it victim claiming. So in order to maintain your dominance, you have to steal victimhood from people who have legitimate grievances,
from us, the real victims,
and claim it as your own. So that's the only way really to maintain this sense of threat, to maintain this sense of precarity, is if you convince yourself. I think these people really believe it. I think these people who are,
I think they really believe it too.
At the helm of extremely popular, widely circulating newspapers really do believe that they are in a minority, because if they stop believing that, then they get complacent. So the only way to kind of keep creating a sense of moral panic, keep creating a sense of threat, keep people voting for you and buy your newspapers, and kind of rushing towards what you have to sell is to tell them that their position is consistently under threat by people that are very weak, that have no political capital, that have no actual capital. And so it's a trick that's not just meant to undermine certain groups, it's meant to maintain momentum and maintain support for right-wing causes, because once you acknowledge that you have won, then you create the space for people to start challenging you.
Wow.
Amazing, right?
That was incredible.
It's like she's a mole for the conservative movement in this country or something, and she's trying to undermine them by being like, yeah, okay.
I just can't get over it. I mean, I can't think of an institution that hasn't virtue signaled for Black Lives Matter or LGBT or whatever. Even the Conservative Party.
The Conservative Party, the government institutions, and just the Parliament.
Yeah.
Like these supposedly partisan organs.
And then just every major corporation, like almost every newspaper, the universities, churches, like everywhere, virtue signals for this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, she mentioned there that the
defundings. Like, the right wing has just been, like, defunded. Like, OANN, whatever it was, Newsmax, all of the demonetizations on YouTube, the MyPillow guy, all of the, like, and then you've got various people, like Matt Christensen being deplatformed from Streamlabs, us being deplatformed, my old channel being deplatformed from Streamlabs, like, all of these other ones. It's like, oh my God.
Endless. But she mentions the EU vote, and they're like, oh, these stupid free speech warriors trying to claim that the EU vote was under threat. What world are you living in?
What was Gina Miller doing?
The last 4 years, what did you think was going on? Like, were you in a coma? I don't understand.
Are you new to politics? Because if you are, let me fill you in.
Just they need to feel like they're the underdog constantly, and it's like.
But also, they're all censored and they're not allowed to talk. And by the way, don't use critical thinking to listen to what they have to say. It's God.
I mean, we have hate speech laws in this country on the books, which is why you end up with things like this. So these are just a few memes I made a while back that I just happened to dredge up for this. So a candidate arrested over Churchill speech. So there was a guy who was quoting Churchill in public, and then the police came around and arrested him. The police of vice and virtue here.
Yeah.
And then the next one.
For blaspheming.
Man arrested for painting "Islam is questionable" on his home.
Well, Islam isn't questionable. Don't you know that, Callum?
But these are the ones who are not the underdogs. They're actually on top, and there's nothing being done to them.
They're the ones creating the power narrative.
Yeah. And the next one here: video of man mocking Muslim prayer room in Bolton Hospital being investigated as a hate crime. So he went in there and made like a TikTok where he was just like, like pretending to pray as if he's from Aladdin or something, because he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. It's just a joke.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. The police are going to investigate this man and track him down. They're going to deal with him.
God, I love that woman's expression as well.
I know.
That's such pure contempt.
This was in response to someone complaining, like, why do people keep using this image as if it means anything? I'm like, because it
does mean something. That's why.
It's a perfect meme face. That's what it is.
Yeah, she looks really angry about something.
Yeah. So I wanted to get an image up. Which
She's not wearing a mask either.
A demonstration of BLM, as you were referring to earlier. I mean, this is the opposition here. You've got one side that are literally being arrested by the police of vice and virtue in our country, and then the opposing side, which marched through in the middle of a pandemic, get no condemnation. They're allowed to march. They should have all been arrested according to
Hundreds of billions donated to Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
Hundreds of billions.
I mean, why do we have an organisation like that in the UK?
Don't know.
I mean, you could sort of
Communist.
see why it expands in the US, but in the UK, it's just international funding and virtue signalling by companies.
It's tremendously profitable for the people running it.
But they're the underdog, guys. It's really the right wing coming for them.
Yeah.
So as a gesture to try and point out that the left must stand up for free speech for God knows what reason, Owen Jones asked the question, so we'll just play his question.
But how do we make the arguments that that this isn't actually about onslaughts of free speech, and actually it's the right? With, for example, the government's new legislation on a free speech czar, which is a very Orwellian concept, forcing people to platform individuals against their will, which is an attack on free association and independent organisation.
Bake the cake!
Right, so how did the left make the argument for free speech? Is essentially the simplified version of what you're saying. Any guesses?
I don't see how they can.
Let's see how they can? All right, people in the chat, put your guesses now, and I'm going to look afterwards while we're playing.
I mean, what's their argument?
What's the defense? The defense is free speech. Death to free speech. Play it.
What?
So this is an unpopular answer, but we basically don't make the argument. We shouldn't let them guilt us via the kind of moral shaming of free speech. into chilling us into ceding our right to object. And I think that a very big danger in these kind of civility discourse and the free speech discourse is that we end up ceding space because we don't want to look unreasonable. We don't want to look like we're impolite, like we're uncivil, like we're anti-free speech. But we are in a basically huge conflict, a defining conflict between right and left-wing values at the moment, and the right is dominant. And what we need to do is basically enact and practice what we believe is free speech. And that includes, being quite strident about no platforming, being quite confident about speech that we just don't want to entertain, and not then be distracted by all these kind of red herring conversations about what free speech is and what free speech isn't. I think most people know what free speech is. And I think the purpose of the free speech argument is that we get bogged down in who's a good free speech person, who is a bad free speech person, while we do that, all the objectionable speech that we should be spending time, objecting to, boycotting, no platforming, objecting to, basically goes unchallenged. So I think the whole free speech argument, we've done it. We've been doing this for 2-3 years now. I think the arguments are clear. I think we should move on to doing the things that the right accuses us of doing all the time, which is shutting down free speech. If we think it deserves to be shut down, we're not throwing anybody in jail or saying their rights, then go for it. I think less argument, more practice is the way forward.
Watch Owen's response.
Practice. Love this. That's fantastic. Lucy has been a very powerful counterweight and an unashamed counter. I mean, this is the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, unashamed is a real problem.
Posture, which is the entire point of this entire discussion and debate. And what you're suggesting is to be a bit more proactive and not allow ourselves to be forced into a defensive posture where we're forced to trip over our own words to prove that we're not this menace that the right portrays us. That was fantastic. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us. Everyone, as I've said, do buy her.
No denunciation. You're wrong on anything.
Well, he can't because
in the Guardian, which is always a little treat for me.
Okay, can we stop him?
I know that's long. The only reason I made it long was to show that he says nothing. He doesn't oppose it at all.
Yeah. John, can you stop it for a second, please? So, I mean, that was genuinely amazing. How does the left make the argument for free speech? No, we don't. We're trying to get people deplatformed.
We are trying to destroy free speech. It is a threat to leftism. And it's just like... And he doesn't disagree.
And any talk
oppose it at all.
And any talk about free speech is us wasting time when we could be deplatforming people. The very thing that Owen Jones is just like, don't be silly, you're not being deplatformed, but these people are actively trying to deplatform you.
Like, we are trying to do it. She doesn't even oppose it.
Unreal. It's So, I mean, she is a gift, actually.
Yeah, I love how she phrases it as well, which is that we don't want to get bogged down by the moral shaming of free speech. We don't want to look anti-free speech. It's like... But there's a reason why it's moral shaming. Yeah. Because what you're doing is evil. You are evil people when you do this.
Yeah, that's a horrible thing to do. And what's worse is the gaslighting. It's like, it's the right that's shutting down free speech. It's the right. But also, we want to shut down free speech. And you're not being shut down just because we've taken everything away from you.
It's like someone with schizophrenia or something.
Yeah, but it fits into the sort of previous New York Times article, the sort of mega narrative. It's like whatever we didn't say is wrong. That's what it is. You will believe whatever reality we present to you, and you'll believe it in the moment at all times. And whatever happened previously, you can just ignore because we have said that that's wrong.
No opposition to it. I just wanted to show one last thing, just how crazy this lady is.
Yeah.
And he invites her on and treats her as an expert on the topic, and she's worthwhile listening to. There's an interview she gave on Channel 4, 1.5 million subs, 7,000 views. Channel 4 clearly doing well.
Yep.
And in this interview, she gives great statements like identity politics exists, but it's mostly practiced by white people.
What?
What universe you're living in.
Where?
And then this is her talking about the free speech myth. Just play the clip.
So the freedom of speech is under attack is a myth that I think began kind of post-Dawkins God delusion, where people began to criticize Islam. I think patient zero with the freedom of speech is in crisis myth was when people began to criticize Islam and Muslims. And when there was pushback against that, the critics of Muslims or the Islamophobes would say, but it's our freedom of speech. We can say whatever we want. Do you want to introduce blasphemy laws from?
Well, I was going to say, doesn't it go back to Rushdie?
Yes, I guess. But with Rushdie, it's different because with Rushdie, the critics were on the Muslim side. So they were on the kind of, the critics of Rushdie were on the Oriental side. But with Dawkins, the critics of Islam were very much in the West. And so the freedom of speech excuse as a canard was rolled out far more frequently after, I would say, Islamophobia 2.0, which is in the past 10 years or so.
I mean, unbelievable.
That's unreal.
Islam pushes back. You mean murdering people in the streets?
But not only that, what she's saying is that people in the East don't care about free speech. People in the West care about free speech. And that's the difference. That's why the West is, the Westerners are bad.
I mean, she amplifies this. This isn't just like a one-off that I've taken out of context. She wrote an article about the Charlie Hebdo shooting. She knows this is going on. She knows that the, quote, pushback is people being murdered in response to criticizing Islam. She knows this. And in here, she tries to obfuscate the whole thing, saying, it is, however, important to not keep repeating the same mistakes, trying to trace the perpetrators to some certain origin. They have none. They belong to no single community, or country, or mosque. Mosque.
Yeah, where did mosque go into this? Like, that's
like,
weird.
You know. She continues to say that the victims of the attack are not only French journalists, but also French Muslims, one of whom died in the attack, and the rest of whom not condoned, but will be nevertheless feel the backlash. It's like, okay, please think of Muslims in this time.
Macron is right about Islamo-leftism.
Jesus Christ. There's another great quote in here, which is just, what civilization do terrorists represent? Fill in your own time. Your own time. Chaps.
Macron is right about Islamo-leftism. I don't think we'll have time to do the final segment because these two ran on, but it's...
I just want to end the last bit here because it's worth it. So Owen complaining about the conservative government not in charge, and this debunks anything we're saying today. He'll say, doesn't matter, Conservative Party's still in charge of the state.
But are they conservative?
I wanted to get the next image up, which is just this. Being offensive is an offence. The police standing outside of this, as if this. So
for anyone who isn't watching, it's a bunch of police standing in front of a grey van, and on that grey van is a giant television screen, and on that giant television screen is a rainbow police flag, the LGBT pride flag with Metropolitan Police symbol on it, and the words "being offensive is an offence. Merseyside police stand with and support the LGBTQI+ community, and we will not tolerate hate crime on any level. Come and speak to #Team Beb." Amazing.
I mean, literal police of vice and virtue that are, being orchestrated by the Conservative Party. And I just have to play this piece of gold, which came out of the Home Office a little while back, which is the last video.
Before we do that, this is horrific.
It is utterly horrific. But this is not new. I mean, this is the Home Office. They put this advert out a while ago. I just want to show the last bit of it. So there we go.
It's not just offensive, it's an offence.
I mean, that was their messaging
in
regards to hate crimes. That if you say things, it's not just offensive, it's an offence. We will get you. We will put you in jail. I mean, that's where we are. That's what we are.
You shouldn't go to parties, Callum.
But, you're not
shouldn't
being
go to gatherings.
But you're not being no platforms when you talk about free speech. Oh, wait, you are, and we're doing it, and we're proud of it.
And the government's doing it.
I mean, this is the insane world these guys lived in, and I'm so glad we're not part of that ecosphere.
Yeah, me too. I'm so glad I don't have to try and maintain the narrative that the left isn't responsible for the deplatformings and the attacks on free speech, while also interviewing someone who's like, we need to do deplatformings more and against free speech, and then saying, and it's the right-wing conservative government that controls everything, therefore leftism is being crushed under the heel of the police, the rainbow jackbooted police of vice and virtue, like of tolerance and diversity. I'm so glad I don't have to try and maintain the contradictions between those narratives.
It's embarrassing a life to live. I mean, it's like hanging out with Nazis and trying to be like, the Holocaust didn't happen, but we'll do it again. Yeah. It's really weird.
And also it was the communists that did the Holocaust, and the Adolf Hitler, he's a communist. Like, that's essentially the same sort of position they're in, and it's like, this is just mad.